Hello again. Something of which most of us are aware is that men tend, on the whole, to be taller and stronger than women. This means that if you want a body of people who are tall and strong, then most of them are going to be men rather than women. I realise that this sounds blindingly obvious, but it does not appear to be apparent to those running Britain's police forces and fire brigades, nor to the people responsible for the armed forces. This same problem is also seen in the United States, of course. Let me begin by giving one example of what I'm talking about. 60 years ago, British police forces had minimum height requirements for officers who would be patrolling the streets. In Nottingham in 1960, police officers on patrol had to be at least 6 foot tall. Most other forces set the minimum height at 5'10", although there were one or two that insisted on 6 foot. The reason for this is that a 6 foot tall policeman with a helmet adding another few inches to his height made an imposing presence and caused a lot of hooligans and troublemakers to think twice when they saw him. Add to that the fact that at that time many police officers were former soldiers. Some used to wear their medal ribbons on their tunics. Such people were excellent at keeping the peace. The very sight of them walking down the street was enough to deter trouble. Then came campaigns to ensure that there were both more women police officers and also those from ethnic minorities such as Pakistan and Bangladesh. People from nations like that in the Indian subcontinent tend to be a lot lighter and smaller than the average white British person. And of course, women tend to be lighter, shorter, and so on, slighter generally, physically, than men. So, the height requirements were reduced in order to get more women and Asians into the police. Would any viewer care to guess what the minimum height requirement is now to be a police officer in this country? Well, there isn't one. It was ultimately decided that such requirements were racist and sexist, and so now even somebody 4 foot tall can join the police and try and keep the peace. The thumbnail to this video shows the inevitable result of all this. It is from this year's Notting Hill Carnival, and the picture shows a tall, athletic man assaulting a slender and short female police officer. He's sexually assaulting her by rubbing himself against her while pinning her to some railings. Would this man attempt that with a 6 foot tall police officer? One who might have been formerly in the armed forces, one asks oneself. Probably not. The sight of two girls patrolling the streets of British cities, both about 5'4" in height, does not inspire as much confidence in most citizens as a couple of 6 foot tall former soldiers would. Here's another example. 30 years ago, firefighters in this country were required as a test of fitness to demonstrate the ability to carry a 12-stone person 100 yards in under a minute. Useful if you're rescuing people from burning buildings, you see. Of course, that ability too was declared to be sexist and has been dropped. Anything which hindered the recruitment of women to our police forces and fire brigades has been systematically scrapped. The result is, of course, firefighters and police officers who are physically frail and need the assistance of men when it comes to tasks requiring strength or aggression. The American Army suffers from the same mad obsession. The recently released Army fitness test now is a unisex one and requires such things as 10 push-ups in 2 minutes. Too many women were failing the old test, you see. 10 push-ups in a minute. I might mention that although I'm pretty much a crumbling ruin these days, I still start each day with the Royal Canadian Air Force exercises from 1958. Anybody here remember the 5BX plan that used to be really popular at one time in the 60s and 70s? I still start each day with the Canadian Air Force exercises from 1958. I do 35 press-ups in a minute. And if I found that I could only manage 10 in 2 minutes, I would think that I was suffering from a catastrophic degeneration of my health. The results, of course, is that armies, police forces and fire brigades in Britain and America are no longer as fit and strong as they need to be, and therefore not as useful at preventing disorder on the streets, saving people from fires, or fighting wars.